Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, before I continue further, I would like to offer you my wholehearted congratulations on your re election to this high office. Sir, the spectre of inflation has been raised. It is said that the monster of inflation is raising its hideous head and that there must be an effort all round to bring down prices. I would like to examine whether there is any justification for raising such a scare and whether there is any inflationary pressure at all on our economy. A false alarm has been raised by our critics to hamper our development expenditure and the development of our economy. While we must maintain a watchful approach, a cautious approach with a view to developing our economy and implementing our plans, an alarmist approach will only mean that we hamper the growth of our economy and our development expenditure. I admit that there has been of late a rise in prices. Now, we have to examine whether this rise in prices is due to inflationary pressures. We all know that this is the peak season when there is the greatest demand for money in our economy. This demand for money is due to two factors at the present moment. It is due partly to the rise in our economic activity and partly due to seasonable factors. The figures of money supply, which have stood at rupees 2150 crores at the end of March, may taper off to rupees 2000 crores after the busy season is over. We have to see whether this supply of money is at all inflationary. What I feel is that in times to come, when the products reach the market, the supply of goods will match the money supply position. But we can also examine, apart from the money supply position, the rise in the price itself. The current statistics reveal that there has been a rise in the prices of food articles, industrial raw material, and semi-manufactured articles, but there has been a steady rise for the manufactured articles. Now, I am sure the House will agree with me that we must maintain a certain parity in our economy between the agricultural products and the manufactured articles. We should see that our agriculturists don't suffer from our economic policies. We must examine whether the parity that is in existence today is a correct one. The point that I am making is that there has been a rise in price of the agricultural products, and this rise has been brought about by a conscious planning effort. But there is no question of alarm for this rise of the price of the agricultural products, because as compared with pre-war levels of price index between the agricultural products and the manufactured articles, the price which the agriculturist gets for his produce is still 3% against him. Now, if we want to reduce the prices, we must reduce the prices of both the agricultural and the manufactured goods. There is no point in becoming alarmist only when the prices of the agricultural products are rising, because I am certain that there is still room for a rise of 3 points in this index. That is to say, there is still room for a slight rise in the agricultural prices before a pre-war parity could be achieved. Therefore, I maintain that there is no room for alarm or scare for the prices that have risen of the agricultural products. This has been as a result of a conscious effort, and there is no inflationary pressure in this rise of prices. Now, I also maintain that we should keep a watchful eye and we should not be complacent, because it is not my intention to advocate inflation. I merely want that a proper parity should be maintained, and in the name of inflation, we should not curtail our development expenditure in the plan. But for keeping this economy steady, we have to see that the supply of goods and services keep on increasing with the demand that is made on them with the rise in our economy, and we should not hesitate if there is a necessity to whittle down even for our foreign resources and import large quantities of food in order to keep the price down when our production of rice has not been better than last year and our rabi crop will not be as good as last year. We have provided for an import of 2 million tons of food grains in order to keep the prices at proper level. I was referring to the Reserve Bank bulletin for the month of March 1950. Therefore, I would beg of the finance minister and the government not to take a timid view of the situation but to take a bolder step to implement the plan, and in order to maintain the economy and the prices at the proper level they should not hesitate to make large imports if found necessary. Sir, I was saying that the Indian Airlines Corporation is running at a great loss, and the scheme that has been prepared does not promise any improvements in the earning capacity of the Airlines Corporation. When we are embarking on our expansion scheme, the result may be that if due care is not taken in the beginning and if standardization is not introduced, the losses may mount up. Thus, more of the taxpayers' money may be wasted in the Airlines Corporation. Therefore, sir, I would request the Honorable Minister to be very careful and scrutinize all the expenditure incurred with respect to the Indian Railways Corporation and the Aviation Department and see that there is no waste. Sir, the Honorable Finance Minister in his budget speech wanted great care to be taken so that there was no wastage in the government's expenditure. I would in this connection like to know from the minister in charge of this bill what steps are being taken by the government to see that there is no wastage in the aviation department. The Air India International is of course running at some profit, but it is purchasing 3 more Boeings, and if the present level of travel is not maintained, there is every likelihood that the Air India International may change its profit into loss. Therefore, the Honorable Minister has to be very careful about it. Then, sir, I come to items number 19 and 20, which relate to the Ministry of Education and Archaeology. Here, sir, I would like to draw your attention to the directive principle laid down in our constitution where it has been stated that within a certain limited period, adult education and complete literacy will be attained. I am surprised to find, sir, that for this purpose the amount sanctioned is very meager. The finances of the states are limited, their sources of income are limited, and what they get from taxes is mostly spent on maintaining law and order and on other items like judiciary and civil administration, etc. And therefore, unless the central government comes to the rescue of the states in the matter of education, I do not think that there will be any substantial progress in this respect. I am sure that the Honorable Minister will say that education is a state subject and it is not therefore the responsibility of the center. Then, sir, I come to the item pertaining to the External Affairs Ministry. In this connection, I would like to submit that I am very glad that the Honorable Prime Minister has made his stand very clear about Kashmir, and I wholeheartedly welcome it. I am very glad to find that at long last, after 2 years, he has stated the stand of India clearly. And therefore, I wholeheartedly support the expenditure pertaining to the Ministry of External Affairs. I would like to know in this connection only one thing, although it does not really come under this ministry. It comes under the Ministry of Finance. I would like to know the steps taken by the Finance Minister about the statement of the loan due to India from Pakistan. Some 2 years back, the Honorable Finance Minister had taken a credit entry to nearly rupees 18 crores as 2 installments of the loan payment by Pakistan. I should call it the pre-partition debt. But that money was not received by India and that amount is still due from Pakistan. I would like to know from the finance minister why this amount of rupees 18 crores was shown as the loan paid by Pakistan.